In an era marked by rapid medical advancements, the journey of novel treatments from research labs to patient care is a pivotal topic. In our next session, a panel discussion on From Bench to Bedside, bringing new medical treatments to patients. Our experts will aim to explore and demystify the complex processes behind transforming medical innovations into real-world patient therapies. Let's join them in this vital dialogue as we venture through this intricate pathway of healthcare transformation. Please welcome our moderator and panelists respectively, Jeffrey Champagne, VP of Business Development at Inertia Product Development, Abhita Batra, Founder and Chief Strategy Officer, Neuro42 Inc., Craig A. Parnell, Senior Director of Business Development at HealthLink Dimensions, Abdelrahman Zamzam, Data Scientist at Unity Health Toronto, and Dr. Eric Ibegbu, MD, FACG, CEO of Atlantic Medical Group. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for spending some time with us today. My name is Jeff Champagne. My background is in early and emerging disruptive technologies in the med tech space, and I've spent the last 15 years working with physician entrepreneurs to create first-of-a-kind medical devices. And I'm excited to share with you our panelists' experience today. We're going to talk a little bit about the process of how do we go from an unmet need to a patient actually using a technology, and what does that mean? Everything from the kind of design, the discovery, the development, the de-risking. I don't know why they always start with Ds, but the deployment and then the messaging that goes along with that. And so I'm really happy we've got a great panel today, and we're going to talk through those things and some of their experiences as they navigate this new product development process. Does this sound better? Is this too loud? Okay. So with that said, I'll introduce my panelists. You heard their kind of credentials, but Abhita, Craig, Abdel, and Dr. Eric Ibegbu, thank you for being here. So let's start early in the process. Before we start developing a device and spend millions of dollars doing so and spend the time to go out there and collect checks from investors, there's a lot that has to go into the discovery process. And so typically there's some revelation, there's some understanding of an unmet need. And from that unmet need, we might see a correlation, and that's where our data scientists come in. Abdel, can you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do in the process of new developments?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Abdel. I'm a data scientist at Unity Health Toronto. I've been working with data for more than 10 years with a pharmaceutical studies background. And boy, do I love my data. You just give me data and I give you answers. So our group is focused mainly on two goals. Number one is improve accessibility to patients. And number two is cutting costs. In our projects, we focus on identifying blood biomarkers that can help predict future outcomes in patients. And these outcomes are mainly cardiovascular disease outcomes. So, for example, a patient may have a blood test, a simple blood test. And from this blood test, we can find the risk of this patient having an MI in the next 2 years, for example. We have a huge plasma biobank back in Canada. It's one of the biggest plasma biobanks in Canada. We have more than 4,000 samples, both blood and urine samples, because we also do urine analysis. And our main goal, as I said, is to build a model that can help improve patient outcomes and predict future outcomes for patients so we can overcome them at earlier stages.
Thank you, Abdel. So this is really a powerful thing. I spent a year as the general manager at Kohler Company. So Kohler is the kitchen and bathroom company. They wanted to own healthcare in the kitchen and bathroom, right? And so one of the exciting things about this industry is that a lot of serendipity occurs, and the fact that Abdel and I were put on a panel together, I don't think is by chance. The universe just said these two people need to meet, and that happens a lot at these kind of conferences, right? So just by connecting the dots. So as you think about that, this blood biomarker that Abdel is working on, this discovery process, right, and labeling something that could predict MIs or heart attacks or congestive heart failure or strokes, I mean, that could be a really powerful tool. And what if you could detect that in a urine biomarker, the same biomarker as blood, but with a U in front of it, that could be a powerful thing. So you could use a toilet, for example, as a diagnostic tool to predict heart health. Wouldn't that be wonderful? So a lot of these kind of seemingly disparate things that we experience in healthcare, when you collect them as big data sets, you start to connect the dots. And I was really excited to hear about his discovery and this correlation, dealing with cardiovascular health issues myself and having a family history. I want to know, right, what's the future hold for me? Can I do something today that'll help my kids have a better future and avoid the health history that my father or my grandfather had as a result of this familial disease? So these are the kind of conversations that spark some of these things that will lead to, if I know I'm going to make introductions for Abdel to investors, how these developments actually get pushed into the marketplace. A lot of it is serendipity, to be honest. And serendipitously, I was also connected to Abhita, Batra again this week. Abhita and I have crossed paths several times before through her work at Automagnetics as CEO. She's a serial entrepreneur, a serial CEO, and is very accustomed to developing and launching products. And I'm going to let her talk a little bit about the two that she's working on today, both at Automagnetics and Neuro42. But again, they all come with, what is the problem we're trying to solve? What's the unmet need? How can we come up with solutions for that? So Abhita, would you mind saying hello and talk a little bit about what you're working on?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. I think it's amazing that we are crossing paths again, maybe after a couple of years, right? It's
Sure.
been 3-4 years.
That's right.
But I think, so overall, my journey has been in healthcare all along. I've been in healthcare for as long as I can remember. It's been over 20 years now. I was born in a pharma family, but then again, I paved my own path with innovation and launch of new products all across the globe. So I've licensed a lot of technologies and launched a lot of products in developing nations as well as developed nations. But the two technologies that I'm here with, one is Automagnetics, where we are doing non-invasive drug delivery, and the other one is Neuro42, which is my recent startup. And we've raised over, I would say, 14 million within 1.5-2 years. And we are very close to commercialization in the 3rd year of the launch. We've developed a product which we licensed from Mass General Hospital. This is a portable MRI for real-time scanning of the brain, just to provide confirmation scans for tumor resection. We want to develop a very new version of the product that the world has never seen. So we are creating a product with the integrated use of MR, AI, and robotics. We have licensed the robotic technology from Johns Hopkins. We would be the first one and the only company to develop a product with the integrated version. But yeah, for the first diagnostic imager that we are developing, we'll commercialize that product next year.
Excellent. Thank you, Abhita. So talking about, reducing the cost of healthcare, providing better access to patients that are looking for that technology that might not be able to get into a major metropolis or an urban center that has the resources or, but taking something that's portable, making it ambulatory, putting it in an accessible location. So I appreciate what you're doing there. We're going to talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you.
And innovation a lot of times starts on the front line, right? From our front, front of the line is the healthcare providers, the practitioners who are discovering those unmet needs. So we're here with Dr. Ibegbu today. Thanks for joining us. And Dr. Ibegbu is a gastroenterologist working on new technology. Love the shoes, by the way.
Thank you.
And if you could help us, Eric, understand a little bit about your background and what does it mean to kind of discover those unmet needs in your practice?
Yeah, indeed. Well, it's so great to be here. Thanks everybody for being here and being attentive. So, indeed, Jeff, thank you very much. So, indeed, I'm a gastroenterologist by training, and however, I've become what I call an endobariatric gastroenterologist. So, my focus of attention now is in helping the average person out there lose weight and get to a healthy weight, because obesity is a condition that many people regard as a moral failure or as a failure of character. They think, oh, when we see somebody who's obese, many times is being said that these people appear to be invisible, if you will. But even if we were to acknowledge somebody who is obese, we tend to think of them first, oh, this is a moral character, or a failure of character on the part of the person. They don't have self-control, they don't have the will to go to the gym and to work out and things like that. But what we should understand, and what I want to pass across very, very clearly to everybody here today, is that obesity is actually a disease. It has a code in the disease code in the medical world that classifies it as a medical condition. So it's likewise, like I'll always say, if you and I were to meet somebody who's diabetic, chances we will make fun of them, right? If we were to meet somebody who's diagnosed with melanoma or who's been diagnosed with leukemia, we will make fun of them, right? Because we know they have a disease, correct?
Sure.
But we inadvertently, silently make fun of people who are obese, right? Because we think it's a social stigma. So in my practice, what we've seen, understanding that obesity is a disease that impacts everybody, really. So that definition begins at a BMI of over 30. So most people in America, we know now, close to 50% of Americans are either overweight or obese, and that rate is increasing. So we knew there was a gap in the solution space, because the solution for obesity was always join a gym, do what everybody does on January 1, and come February 1, they forget all about it, right? Or the other extreme was surgery, have life-altering surgeries like gastric bypass, which has saved a lot of lives, gastric sleeve surgery. But then there's this big gap between going to the gym and having surgery, where there was no solution for many years. And gladly now we do have these endobariatric procedures that I specialize in, where we're able to alter the gastric anatomy without surgery, accomplish the same with less risk to the patient, and patients are able to go home very, very quickly, and on the same day actually, and which is really exciting. So now we can actually help people get to a healthy weight, because what my dear friend here was referring to regarding MIs or heart disease that we can predict. We know one of the great predictors for heart disease is obesity. So it's right in our face, and yet we ignore it. We ignore it as a group of doctors and professionals, and as a country. Because most people don't look at themselves when they're obese. They don't look at themselves like they have a problem, right? They just think, I'm obese, or I'm overweight, or I'm a little bit overweight, but the truth is that they have a medical condition. And until we start to address obesity for what it is, a medical condition, then unfortunately, people are still going to treat it as a casual condition, which, in my opinion, is a silent killer. It drives every other metabolic syndrome we know, from diabetes to high blood pressure to heart attacks and things like that. But anyway, that's just a big nutshell of what we are doing in the obesity space.
Thank you, Dr. Ibegbu. Appreciate it. So later on in the process, once solutions have been created and once you found the unmet need and discover a way to solve it, right now we need to get it out to the public that these things are available, that these technologies are available. And so I'm going to talk to Craig a little bit, but then also back to Dr. Ibegbu. How do we create awareness for these technologies as they come out? Craig, if you talk a little bit about your background in the biotech space, but also, how does the adaptability of these indications and how these drugs in pharma are used affect those populations?
Yeah, well, Craig Parnell, I'm the Senior Director of Business Development at HealthLink Dimensions. And we have the largest physician database in the nation. We do programmatic advertising as well as email marketing. But what we really do is sit down with pharmaceutical clients, hospital clients, and help them get the word out to their audience. That's what we do, and bottom line. I have 40 plus years in the pharmaceutical business and the advertising business. And it's very interesting. I was sharing this before. I actually launched Revlimid in multiple myeloma, and that was a top drug in 2006. That drug in the 1950s caused birth defects. And there was a scientist in the labs at Celgene that said, my God, this was causing birth defects, and now it's it's actually one of the best therapies in the world for multiple myeloma.
Yep.
So
Speaking to the mic, Craig. Just put the mic a little bit closer. Yeah, there you go. Sorry.
So it starts with the scientist. That's at the end of the day. And once they have that innovation and it goes through phase 3, then we get it out in the market, the word out to the physician, the patient. And there's a lot of technologies you're using today that excel that relationship between the patient and the physician, as well as the pharmaceutical company getting the word out there.
That's right. So one of the things that I've used to frame these discussions and a lot of these technology developments is what we call the triple aim. The Affordable Care Act, as it was built, had this triple aim at its center, and the triple aim is really to lower the cost of healthcare, to increase the patient experience, and to address population outcomes. And so, all of these entrepreneurs and scientists and marketers or doctors are doing just that, right? They're trying to find better ways to reduce that cost to get a better outcome. And recently I joined a company in Toronto and have been involved with different healthcare initiatives in Canada over the years. But I always find it interesting north of the border, the mindset when it comes to healthcare is more of an all for one and kind of one for all. There is a common interest in lowering that cost of healthcare. In the U.S., it seems to be, how can we charge more? Or how can I build a business around making money in solving problems? So there's a real difference there. And the countries are incentivizing the populations in similar ways too. I remember I worked as a judge for Genome Quebec. It was a genetics competition in Quebec region, and half of the score was on how does this address population health? How does this improve the health of our country? Not an individual group, not a specific disease state. How does this raise the bar for everybody? And I think if we want to really solve healthcare problems in this country, we need to have solutions that address those things at the base level as a foundation for success, as opposed to for profit. And once we start doing that, we're going to see actual outcomes improve. And the reason why I mention that is as Craig is mentioning, different ways that we can repurpose things, or we can find solutions and get them out to the people that are going to be using them as end state, or creating awareness and campaigns around disease states that are social stigmas that keep people isolated, right? But they really just need help. They need treatments, they need things that are going to get them back to living a healthy life. But I think the more that we can phrase things and create a common language around healthcare, the more we can develop products that are going to actually do just those things. Abhita, as you look at population healthcare, right, and this portability and the ambulatory element of MRI, what motivates you to launch these products into the market?
I think we've been very fortunate that we are working in healthcare and we can make a difference in someone's life, right? When you create products, even if it's generic market, right? You provide the product at an affordable price. You provide it to masses that can impact the world. But when you get to innovation, you can actually change the dynamics of healthcare, right? No one ever thought that real-time diagnosis could be possible, outpatient procedures could be possible, but
Sure.
they are possible now.
Yep.
Things have changed, and more importantly, for Neuro 42, we are changing the landscape, because if you look at Neuro Suites, it costs around 10 million or more to develop one.
Yep.
But with the product that Neuro 42 is developing, you don't have to do that. These are products that are portable, that can be put in a clinician setting, do not require that extra shielding or physician to prepare a patient or physician to spend hours to prepare the room. It allows for the product to be there, in any office-based setting.
Yep.
And that's something that the world has never seen before, especially in brain, right? You talk about brain. A physician has to go for, or a physician does surgery for hours and hours.
Sure.
If we can provide real-time scan, create an impact so that those surgeries are correct and accurate, and there are no mistakes made, and there are no misdiagnoses that are happening, for that particular indication, that's a real impact.
Sure. So, for example, you had mentioned stroke as being one of the indications that could be looked at with this new ambulatory technology, and getting to those stroke victims or those patients that are experiencing potential strokes. Right. Every
Yeah.
second is going to count. No.
See, time is brain.
Yep.
So the most important thing is, like, if you talk about neurological condition or stroke, every second counts. Yes.
Yep.
So it is important.
And then the cost as well. So cost
Yeah.
of a typical MRI setup in a hospital with its own wing that's dedicated and its
Yeah.
own reinforced floors and everything else, so you can house these massive magnets. What's the typical cost? I mean, it's up there.
It's out there. It's like $10 to $20 million. The experience is uncomfortable with the neuro imaging device that
Yep.
we are developing, which is portable,
Sure.
to provide real-time diagnosis. That the cost is going to be around 600K, but the eventual product that we are developing that has the integrated version of AI, MRI, and robotics, the market analysis shows us that the market is ready to pay for it, which is, I think, around 1.1 million or upwards of 1 million, which is still a small portion of what they're spending right now. So
That's
yeah,
right.
it's very cost effective.
So yeah, when you talk about access to care, I mean those massive changes in the dynamics of the structure are going to make a big difference.
Exactly.
Thank you, Abhita. Abdel, when you are working as a data scientist uncovering these new kind of correlations, what's your motivation? What gets you up in the morning? How do you think about developing new things?
Yeah. Well, first of all, like it's an amazing feeling when you be able to improve someone's life, even like by a small portion. It's an achievement for me just to be able to improve someone's life, or even warn him earlier that, okay, so you are at risk of developing a certain condition. And to be able to do this is what makes me motivated every day to work on my data, to be able to develop my models to be more accurate and more efficient.
So how long in the future? I mean, you're on the front edge of kind of a discovery, right? So how long could that take to actually get into the hands of someone that's gonna benefit from it?
Well, we've been working on several biomarkers, and I will mention an example. Like we're currently working on a biomarker called fatty acid binding protein 3, short FABP3. This biomarker, we have found that this biomarker is expressed in a certain concentration in the plasma of patients suffering from peripheral artery disease. We have successfully identified cutoff points for this biomarker to diagnose a patient with PAD. Also, we have used this biomarker to predict future outcomes for patients with PAD, like requiring a vascular intervention, or even myocardial infarctions, strokes, and other cardiovascular diseases. And to answer your question, so it might take, like, we've been working on this for like 4 years now. We have found a lot of discoveries throughout our way, and I believe in the next like 2 or 3 years we'll be able to effectively utilize this biomarker in the market as an effective biomarker that can predict cardiovascular diseases in patients with peripheral artery disease. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks. So 2 years. So how can we shorten that path, right? How can we make it easier? We just saw through the pandemic emergency use cases and the ability to kind of rapidly move things through pipelines that typically there's lots of roadblocks. Obviously, for safety and efficacy reasons, those roadblocks are in place. But how can we as an industry change the dynamics so that we can eliminate some of the bureaucracy or roadblocks that make it faster? Craig or Dr. Ibegbu, any suggestions or comments?
Yeah, indeed. So I think that unfortunately the practice of medicine in 2023 and in recent years, we've all are now practicing what I call the medicine of catastrophe, right? We are in a catastrophic mode. We are trying to help people jump off a burning building. My dream, my vision is, how do we keep the daggone building from burning up in the first place? How can we stop the fire? How can we prevent the fire?
Yeah.
So my emphasis when I speak with patients and I help patients is I try to look at it from a preventative standpoint. And sometimes I think I'm working myself out of a job, but that's great. Because if everybody is healthy, guess what? If everybody is at a healthy weight, I believe the incidence of diabetes and blood pressure and myocardial infarctions and strokes will be minimal. And this is not a fantasy. This has been documented in communities around the world where obesity is at an all-time low. The communities and countries that have lower obesity rates don't have these conversations we have in America. They just don't. They don't have to.
Yeah.
Because they are spending their time and the infrastructure building their community, building their people. People are living happier, longer, healthier. And here we are in America, and we are focused so much on equipping people with parachutes to jump off of a burning building. Mm. Let's stop the fire. Let's prevent the fire. That's my thing. I know, obviously, prevention is not pushed in American medicine because prevention does not put dollars in the pockets of companies that push medications and things like that. And nothing wrong with pharmaceuticals. I love pharmaceuticals. I use them. I prescribe them. I believe in them. But I think that the more we can get more people on the preventative side of life, the better we will be as a community, the better we'll be as a people, and the better our purpose on earth will have been fulfilled. For me, the drive is let's prevent. Let's prevent. And that's where we know now that obesity drives every condition my dear friends and panelists have mentioned this afternoon, and what everybody else at this conference talked about. The background of it all, the elephant in the room that is never addressed is the weight. It marvels me, right? Before I got into endobariatrics, I would sit with patients who I knew clearly their BMI was 40, 45, 50, and it was so difficult for me to address it because I felt they will think I'm judging them. They will think I'm looking down on them. In fact, I had a woman who left a note for my office once, because now in my office we have signs that talk about obesity and things that we do. And she said when she walked into our office, she felt that we were judging her. Like, girl, we ain't judging you. We're here to help you. We want you to acknowledge that there's a problem.
Sure.
And when we acknowledge that there is a problem, and the problem has a root, because again, I think we keep chopping up the branches of the tree, and we don't address the tree. The branches of the tree is diabetes, is high blood pressure, is COPD, is sleep apnea. Those are the branches of the tree, and that's where the whole focus of of doctors are on. And before you know it, at the age of 50, you now have a pill box with 7,000 pills in it. I wish we can address the tree. Sorry for the
No, I think your job is safe for now. But yeah, Craig, would you like to comment?
Yeah, if I look at the clinical trial process in general, I think we can excel that, and in a diverse population, populations. That's very important.
Yep.
And I think with the technology we have today, we can do that. Some drugs have gone to market, and certain populations actually didn't. No clinical trial was done.
Yep.
And the effect of the drug was a lot less on that population. So I think there's a big area there. Actually, my son works for a technology company that's speeding up the clinical trial process. And if we can do that in a more efficient way, we can save a lot more lives. And that's going to save a lot of money, too. There's a lot of money involved there.
Sure.
It takes the drug to go to market 10 years, $1.2 billion. It's a lot of money. I think if we can speed up that process, we can bring that price point down. And that we have, as an industry, we have to look at that. So,
Sure.
yeah.
Abhita?
I think I have one comment.
Sure.
So it's very interesting. Like we were trying for decades to get a vaccine that could work with the technology of mRNA, right? COVID was a clear scenario where the sense of urgency drove us to put all the resources in to get a vaccine that could, clear the pandemic.
Sure.
And we did it. We did it within a year. We created a product. So that's a classic example. When you put the resources well in a product, put all the energies, and bring all the forces together, you can do it.
If they're properly motivated.
Yeah, if they're motivated, if they are managed well, and I think that's the easy answer.
Yeah, that was kind of my reason why for the question is we do have the resources, we do have the technology, we can build it, right? We can make it go faster.
Yeah.
We can include diverse populations in our clinical trials.
Yeah.
How do we hold the industry's feet to the fire to actually do that, right? Before the building catches on fire.
Yeah. I hope we don't need pandemic again, for all these things, but
Yeah.
it's just the sense of urgency, and people have to feel that this is a requirement. Like getting a solution for cancer treatments, all sorts of cancer treatment should be a priority.
Sure.
Government should provide the resources, and we should have the ability to fund those companies that are working on those researches and things like that. So.
Yeah. And I do, to your point, Dr. Ibegbu, and also to your point, Abhita, I think that, finding solutions to cancers and all these diseases that we're talking about, metabolic disorder or diabetes or other things, I don't think it's all, genetic. I don't think it's all diet and exercise. I do think a lot of it has to do with diet and the things that we allow to happen in this country that don't happen in other places. So I'm going to say something provocative, but you can write this down and quote me on it. The FDA is also intermingling with companies that are both producing things that we put on all our food. Our food supply is toxic. Our process is evaluated by executives that come from that same industry. And when the food supply and the regulatory process for pharma is regulated by the same group, I think we have a major problem. I don't think, in Europe, if you go to eat something, there's no glyphosate sprayed on it, right? Whether it's corn, sugar, or wheat, the whole food supply is toxic. So it shouldn't be a fact that, unless you're able to afford to eat clean food, that you have access to better health care and you have better health. I think it should be something that, is a universal right to clean food. And I think that's one thing the FDA could do to improve healthcare overall, right, in this country. But until then, until there's a regulatory body that's responsible for that, there's no reason why they should be reducing the health care. They're not motivated to do so. So sorry for bringing that statement to the table, but that's the way I feel. But it also produces things like metabolic disorder. And if the same company that produces the metabolic disorder is curing the metabolic disorder, and their profits are reflected in that, then there's a big problem. So I think, overall in this product development space for new medical technologies, it's made up of individuals, professionals like these that are motivated to do well by doing good, that get up in the morning thinking we can do better. We can solve this problem together. There's definitely a way that we can, we can help the next patient have a better experience. And I also think that the best way to be an innovator in this space of product development is to be a patient, to go through it. Because typically a lot of the people that I meet that develop new products are like, you're not going to believe the experience I just had. We can do better. I'm going to spend the rest of my life dedicated to making sure the next patient doesn't have to go through what I just went through. And one of the places where I see that, really seriously, and it's not a trend, it's not a fad, it's a necessity, is in the equality and the treatment of women in healthcare and the ability to find solutions for women in med tech, women-led businesses, but also technologies for women's healthcare, because I believe they have a similarly disequal experience in our healthcare system. So I spend my time as an investor. I spend my time working on vetting women's healthcare companies. I invest in women's healthcare companies because I believe in that equality. As someone with 4 sisters and a mother and a wife and a daughter, right? I want them to have a better experience in the future for what they have to go through. So if you're part of a women's healthcare company, or if you're a women-led business, I'd love to learn about your story and introduce you to my friends in that space as well, because I think that we can do better. So, yeah. Before we go any further, I just want to ask if there's any questions from the audience, if there's any comments or concerns, derogatory remarks, anything you'd like to throw at us. Go ahead.
Yes, this question is for Dr. Ibegbu. Great presentation. I love everything. My question is, you talked about solving the problem of obesity with non-surgical procedures. Can you explain a little bit about what those procedures are like, what type of procedures that you do, so that we could figure out how to recommend this to some people that really need it?
Sure. Did you plant her in the audience to ask these questions, Dr.
Exactly.
Beck? Okay, I'm sorry.
How could you tell, Jeff?
Excuse me. They came in together. No.
That's a great question. No, that's a super, super great question. And thank you for asking that question indeed. Yeah, in this kind of format, it's difficult to get everything out, so it's important. The non-surgical options that we offer endoscopically, non-surgical options, include a procedure that is called endoscopic sleeve gastroplasty. So endoscopic sleeve gastroplasty is what I call the non-surgical version of the gastric sleeve surgery. Whereas gastric sleeve surgery, many of you probably know about or know people who've had it, is performed laparoscopically. Endoscopic sleeve is performed endoscopically. So there is no outside incision, and because of that, we are able to keep the risk a lot less. So the risk for endoscopic sleeve is about 0.3%. When you compare that to surgery, surgery is in the 30% mark. That's a 100-fold reduction in risk. And to have a 100-fold reduction in risk and something that brings benefit and results is a no-brainer. So that's one of our main procedures. And of course, we also have a procedure we call the balloon procedures. Many of you may be familiar with balloon procedures, like the Obera balloon, for example, where we implant a saline-filled balloon in the stomach, and the balloon occupies space, leads to greater satiety. But we pair all these wonderful procedures with working with our dietitian group, with working with our behavioral therapy group, because this habit of overeating is many times driven by the stresses of life, right? So we saw what happened with COVID. We just talked about COVID. What's the one thing that COVID did to everybody? Everybody put on weight. I don't care who you are, right? We all did. And so with things like that, stress, which is part of life, somebody says if you don't have any stress, then you're not growing. So stress is a sign of growth. So, but with stress, some people will resort to overeating. And so behavioral therapy is big in what we do. And then, of course, we have a solution for people who've had gastric bypass or gastric sleeve and regained weight. And we have endoscopic solutions, which was never available until about 3 years ago. It's very exciting. We call it bariatric revision. So those are some of the things that we do in our practice that are just really life-altering for the better.
Sign me up. I'm ready. Another question. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, more of a comment than a question.
Shoot.
I want to amplify your comments about the importance of women's health and what we are facing right now. The recent report from the Kaiser Family Foundation really shows that one of the negative outcomes that seems to have arisen from COVID and a lack of attention is a worsening of our women's outcomes. And I'm based in Texas, and we're 49th out of 51 jurisdictions in our approach to women's health. That is strongly driven by the politics of the state, an attitude which is hostile to women and women's health. And frankly, the only way that we're going to get change is different leadership. So that's it.
Yeah, thank you.
Well said.
That's an important comment. And when we talk about healthcare as a right and not a privilege for those that can afford it, we're also talking about where do you live, right? What healthcare do you have access to? What are the policies that are being enacted? What are the predatory politics that are involved? And I certainly appreciate your comment. So this would be a federally protected right for women in healthcare in their choices, but also in the way that they're able to make decisions in their healthcare. Thank you for that comment. Any response from the panel?
Yeah, so 9 out of 10 of my patients are women. That's the truth.
Sure.
Now, is it because women are more obese than men? Maybe not, but women tend to care more than men.
Sure.
So yes, the emphasis on women is huge because they are oftentimes the decision makers.
Yep.
And many of the men that come to me came because their wives kicked them out of the house to come to me.
Yep.
So thank you, women. Thank you to my wife who also kicks me out of bed to go do what I do every day.
Sure.
No, I think I echo what you're saying, right? I mean, women are traditionally trained to take care of everyone in the family but themselves. So they are never into self-care. So I think focusing on healthcare when we dedicate ourselves to women's healthcare, or even educating women to take care of themselves so they can take care of the family, that's very important. Right now, I know so many women who feel guilty taking care of their health just because they feel they'll lose out on the time, with the family or with their friends, and they don't feel good about it. I think that should change.
Yeah.
That should change, and I think people like yourselves who are heavily invested in women's healthcare products or companies or whatsoever, I think that creates an impact. I think men have to start proposing that and championing that, which I see already happening.
Yep.
So I think that's good.
And that can also put pressure on these politicians, right? Because they want to know, where your vote is going to come from, and they don't realize that 51% of the population is actually women. I don't understand how they don't get that. But other comments? Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, this is, I started my career at Johnson & Johnson in women's health care. And at the time, we did a program called Straight Talk. This is back in the early 90s. And we went around to high schools talking to teenagers in inner cities and teenage women about oral contraceptives. And they don't have to be pregnant, and they can go on and get a college degree. And that's a very important message to get out there, because if the education is there about women's health and diverse populations here in the States or wherever, we're going to have a healthier society. We're going to have a happier society. As you know, when we talk about purchasers of household goods, women, they spend the money. It's a fact. So we really have to look at the target. I was actually at a conference 2 years ago. We had a portable mammogram for women. That's so important, right? So you have a busy mom, maybe 2 kids, to be able to do that mammogram in a portable fashion, very important. So I think when we look at health technology, we've been talking about health technology, there's a lot to be done in the next 10 years.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions from the audience? Thank you, Greg. Go ahead.
Do you guys, it's for everybody, do you guys agree that type 2 diabetes is pandemic? If not, why not? And if it is, We
Could-
have a solution.
Could you speak into, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Do you guys agree that type 2 diabetes is a pandemic?
We think diabetes is a pandemic.
Yes.
Yeah, I do. I do think, I mean, it's obviously a growing condition. I think metabolic disorder in general is a growing condition.
And we have a solution, and where can we get the help to get the product in the market?
Love to learn about your solution. Yeah, I'd love to
Of
learn
course.
about it. But again, I think that diabetes as a pandemic is not just a disease. It's actually that we're being poisoned. so if you're eating a diet that's mainly made of wheat, corn, and sugar, and all of those things have poison in them and glyphosate and other things like that, then you're going to develop metabolic disorder, which is diabetes, right? Period. So until we get to the root cause of this, we can come up with all the devices, all the solutions, all the surgeries, but we're still not going to solve the problem.
We do have found the root cause. IAPD cause type 2 diabetes. Dr. Madhusudan Malo published this paper in BMJ 2022, January 26. And no one is talking about it.
Okay, Dr. Motherson, you said?
Dr. M.S. Malo.
MS Small. Okay.
He was a postdoc in MIT. He was a Harvard assistant professor for 10 years, and he found it.
Awesome. Well, if you could connect with me afterwards, I'd love to learn more about that.
Of course, I will. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you for the comment. Appreciate it. Any other comments, questions, concerns? We've got 4 minutes left in this panel. Here we go.
I'll offer another comment on the women's health area. I spent 19 years at Parkland Hospital in Dallas, had the privilege there of working with Ken Levino and the editors of Williams' textbook. It's great to be a managed care director when instead of saying no to your OBs, you ask them for advice because they're the editors of the textbook.
Sure.
At any rate, we developed through the Parkland Center for Clinical Innovation. We've published this stuff, presented it at IHI. We developed a predictive model using the health plan's data that predicted preterm birth with 70 to 80% accuracy for women who were primips, first-time pregnancies. We were 50% accurate, and 50% may sound very good, but the rest of the literature is about 25%.
Wow.
So then we deployed it, and the way we deployed it was we had a number of practices that actually used the data, similar practices that didn't use it as a control group, and when we ran the model, we ran it against the control practices and against our predicted values in the practices or interventions. The results were similar. First 2 years, 25% reduction in preterm birth. So predictive modeling and the use of clinical data, and I would say that EHR data is good, but in most things, you also want to get your insurers and incorporate claims data, which is, we drove ours on claims data, so that way you can look at both the outcomes and you can look at the cost in an accurate manner. So anyone who's interested, love to discuss it. Dr. David Nelson, who was our collaborator in developing the model, is now the head of maternal fetal medicine at UT Southwestern. So there's some real good expertise and some great outcomes on this. And Dr. Nelson is now doing fabulous work on his own in social determinants of health that he's recently published.
Awesome. Thank you for the comment. Yeah, when we raise the bar for maternal health and infant mortality rates go down, the cost of healthcare goes down, the bar raises for everybody. But thank you. 2 minutes. Any comments from the panel? Any last questions? All right. I think we covered a lot of ground. This is an eclectic group. I want to thank them for joining Dr. Erica Ibegbu, Abdel Zamzam, Craig Parnell, and Abhita Batra. Thank you so much for being part of the panel and the discussion. Thank you. I hope this was helpful.